feeling hollowed out, like you just spent an hour running in place. Scrolling doesn't feel like effort. It doesn't even feel like a decision. And that's by design. It's built to exploit the same bias you just watched at work in the coin toss. Our drive to avoid the small discomfort of the present moment, even when it costs us something much larger later. But here's the part that should actually worry you. The algorithm was never just watching you to understand you. It was watching you to shape you. There's a name for what's happening underneath all of this. Harvard professor Shoshana Zuboff calls it surveillance capitalism, an economic system where your private experiences, what you linger on, what you scroll past, what makes you pause, all of those become raw material, not to serve you better, but to predict you better, and eventually steer you better. And we hand this over willingly. Every account you've ever created came with a terms of service agreement that you almost certainly never read. You scrolled past the one document that might have told you exactly what you were giving away to get faster to the thing that was going to take it from you. Your ability to tolerate slow moments or to cultivate the habit of enduring short-term discomfort for long-term gain is being whittled down by these platforms that profit off of our attention. We always want big and loud and sensational, and we want that now. We want it over quickly so we can move on to the next big, loud, sensational thing. Our free will, our ability to choose, is being destroyed to serve corporate interests. Because if your patterns can be modeled, and your attention can be sold, and your scroll can be engineered, what exactly is left that is still yours? But there's another implication here that goes far beyond advertising. Suppose, for a moment, that the philosophers and the scientists that we've already discussed are even partially correct. Suppose our decisions are shaped wholly by subconscious processes, by our environment, by cognitive biases and predictable patterns of behavior long before we become consciously aware of making a choice. If that's true, then human beings are, at least to some degree, predictable. For centuries, that predictability was simply an interesting philosophical problem. Today, it has become an extraordinarily valuable commercial asset. The central idea behind this trend is surprisingly simple. Every time we interact with a digital platform, we leave behind a trail of behavioral data. Not just what we clicked, but how long we hesitated before clicking, how quickly we scrolled past it, which videos we finished and which we abandoned partway through, what time of day we're browsing, which notifications we ignore, and which ones immediately pull us back into an app. These tiny fragments of behavior are collected, analyzed, and transformed into increasingly accurate predictions about what we are likely to do next. Notice what's happened here. The philosophical question has quietly become an engineering problem. Companies don't need to settle the debate over free will. They don't need to know whether consciousness truly authors our decisions or merely narrates them after the fact. They only need to know that our behavior follows reliable patterns often enough to make accurate predictions. Every successful recommendation, every advertisement that you click, every notification that succeeds in bringing you back to an app is evidence that your future behavior was, to some extent, foreseeable. These systems aren't perfect, but they don't have to be. If an algorithm can predict your next decision even slightly better than chance, and it can make that prediction billions of times each day across billions of users, that small statistical advantage becomes worth billions and even trillions of dollars. This is why the modern internet is built around surveillance and observation. The more accurately a platform can model your behavior, the more effectively it can anticipate what will capture your attention. Your digital footprint becomes less a record of who you were and more of a forecast of who you're about to become. But this prediction is only the beginning. Imagine you discover that someone always takes the same route home from work. Predicting their journey is useful. You can set up your smashburger joint along their usual route to hopefully capture their business. But you know what's even more valuable? Being able to convince them to take a different route where you have not one or two, but thousands of different stores, so they just have to stop at one. Surveillance capitalism follows the same logic. Once a system becomes sufficiently good at anticipating behavior, the next step is learning how to influence that behavior in subtle, almost imperceptible ways. A recommendation appears at exactly the right moment. A notification arrives just as your attention begins to drift elsewhere. A headline is written to exploit your curiosity. A video automatically begins before you've decided whether you want to watch another one. Individually, these are tiny nudges. None of them is forcing you to act. But together they shape the environment in which your decisions are made. This is what makes the discussion of free will so relevant today. If our decisions are already constrained by unconscious drives, cognitive biases, and deterministic processes, then changing the environment around those decisions changes the outcomes that we're likely to produce. The platform doesn't necessarily need to override your will. It only needs to arrange your choices so that one path feels easier, more familiar, or more rewarding in the moment than the alternatives. Convenience becomes the mechanism of influence. The result is that the same behavioral tendencies described by Kahneman, Tversky, Libet, and Haynes are no longer merely subjects of academic research. They've become design principles. Every insight into how people actually make decisions can be incorporated into products whose success depends on capturing and directing human attention. In that sense, surveillance capitalism doesn't prove that free will is an illusion. It simply assumes that we are predictable enough for prediction to be profitable. And every year, those predictions become more accurate. So where does this leave all of us? Well, we've traveled from Laplace's vision of a perfectly deterministic universe to Spinoza's argument that our choices are simply links in an endless chain of cause and effect. We've looked at neuroscience, suggesting that our brains begin preparing actions before we become consciously aware of making them. We've seen psychologists demonstrate that our decisions are riddled with predictable biases. And finally, we've watched those same predictable behaviors become the foundation for one of the largest industries in human history. At every stage, the same uncomfortable idea has emerged. Perhaps we are far less in control than we like to believe. For centuries, that was merely a philosophical curiosity. It was something debated in lecture halls and written about in books. Whether free will existed or not didn't seem to change much about everyday life. If philosophers wanted to argue over determinism, let them. The rest of us still have jobs to go to, families to raise, and decisions to make. Today, though,